White plaque is not about teeth. 70% of people over 50 wake up every morning with a white coating on the tongue. 70%. And do you know what they do? They brush their teeth and they wash it off and live on because they think, well, raids are raids, we need to do better to clean. And this is not about teeth, not at all, about teeth. I've been seeing dentists for 20 years, and they first thing, why the tongue reveals everything. What do I do when a person sits down? On the contrary, I ask you to open your mouth even before that. How does he manage to tell what he has? It hurts. Not because it's a tradition, but because language cannot pretend. It shows everything. Intestines, liver, pancreas, nervous system. Why does it work? Language is the only internal organ that you can see for yourself without equipment, without laboratory. It is permeated with vessels and nerve endings that directly associated with the digestive system. Something went wrong in the intestines, tongue changes. The liver is overloaded, the tongue changes. It's normal physiology. It's just we've somehow forgotten how to look at this. The white coating is exfoliated cells, epithelium, bacteria, food residues, proteins. Normally, all of this is washed away. With saliva, the tongue is constantly renewed, but when something inside is broken, renewal it slows down, plaque accumulates, and here it is right on your tongue. It came to me, Galina Petrovna, 62 years old, complained of fatigue and bitterness in the morning, and says, "Doctor, I have 3 times I brush my teeth all day. I rub my tongue with a comb, and by lunchtime it's white again." I looked at language and it immediately became clear. This is not teeth, it's the gallbladder, he screams. Through 2 weeks ultrasound confirmed. 3 times I spent the day brushing my teeth, but I just needed to. I had an ultrasound done 2 years ago. When the gallbladder, liver, and gallbladder, the bladder or liver works with overload, the plaque changes color. It becomes yellowish white, sometimes with a distinct yellowness. Not bright yellow, no. It's like someone just touched it up a little, and he dents. Lies on the back third of the tongue, closer to the root, and does not go away after no water, no food. The back third of the tongue is anatomical zone of abdominal organs cavities. Liver, gallbladder, intestines. Cholecystitis, fatty hepatosis, gallstone plaque appears there almost always. I've been seeing this for 20 years. This a pattern, not an accident. And so what's important is to add some yellowish coating, something else. Bitterness in the mouth, especially in the morning before eating. Heaviness under the right rib when you eat fatty foods, nausea, which it's not tied to anything specific, just background. If all this is there is an 80% chance that the problem is in biliary system. Viktor Semenovich, 58 years old, walked around with bitterness in my mouth for 5 years. Years of chewing mints, chewing gum interrupted the taste. Came to me, I look at the tongue, it's yellow-white at the root dense. I ask, heaviness on the right, what happens after shish kebab or fatty meat? He looks at me. How do you know? From there, an ultrasound, a bend in the gallbladder, bile stagnation. The man ate lollipops for 5 years. Bile is not just something for digestion of fats. This is an active substance. It regulates movement. Intestines, suppresses pathogenic bacteria, helps to absorb vitamins A, D, E, and K. When bile stagnates, the whole this mechanism breaks down at once. And white, the yellowish coating, is the visible tip, everything that's going on inside. But here's what's interesting. Sometimes the coating is white. Without any yellowness, a person feels I feel fine. But the problem is already formed because there is an organ who is especially quiet. I will tell you about a little later. And first the intestines, and dysbiosis, because in my practice he gives a white coating most often, much more often than anything else. That's what surprised me at the time. The coating on the tongue when problems with the intestines appear earlier than the person himself something feels. Bloating before. Constipation. The tongue signals first, always. The explanation's simple. The intestines and the oral cavity is 2 ends of one tubes, one mucous membrane, one nervous regulation, one microbial ecosystem. When the intestines break down balance of bacteria and we call it dysbiosis, pathogenic flora begins release toxins. Toxins are absorbed into blood, reaching the mucous membrane of the tongue, and the language reacts, slows down the update cells, accumulates plaque, like litmus paper, a piece of paper, only free and always with you. With dysbiosis, the plaque is white, uniform, middle and back tongue. In chronic constipation, it is denser, often with a grayish tint, and almost there is always a bad breath that does not. It can't be removed by anything at all, not even rinsing, not with paste. For intestinal inflammation, the plaque is uneven in spots, and the tongue itself slightly swollen with teeth-marked sides. This is the last sign of people almost never notice it themselves. But he's very informative. I'll come back to him again. I'll be back. Lyudmila Vasilyevna, 64 years old, plaque and bad breath came in. He says, I've already changed 3 toothpastes. I asked about my stool. It turned out to be constipation 2-3 every other day, and this has been going on for several years now. She considered it the norm for her age. Fecal microflora analysis. Dysbiosis 3rd degree. You understand? 3rd degree. 3 toothpaste here are nothing at all. What does that have to do with it? That's why I do it every time. I repeat the same thing. Don't fight with tongue. A tongue scraper is like wipe the pressure gauge arrow with a cloth machine. The pressure doesn't change. I've been telling patients about this for 20 years reception, one-on-one. Now I'm saying here to reach those who I haven't reached the doctor yet. If it matters to you, subscribe. I come out every week. After dysbiosis is almost an epidemic in 50 years, I'm not exaggerating. Intestinal motility slows down, enzymes become less. Plus antibiotics, which people accepted for years on various occasions. All it leaves a mark. And a coating on the tongue. This is often the only visible manifestation of what is happening on along 1.5 meters of intestine, where you can't look now pancreas. I'm highlighting it separately, and here's why. This is the only one order of the digestive system, which in the early stages it doesn't hurt at all. The man lives normally, works, thinks that everything is fine, but the hardware is already working at 20% of its capacity possibilities. 20. The pancreas does two things: produces enzymes, break down proteins, fats, carbohydrates, and produces insulin to regulate sugar. When it starts to malfunction, break down, and both at the same time. And language shows. How exactly? The coating is white but with a distinctive detail dense in the center language and as if blurred, smeared edges, sometimes a barely perceptible grayish or even a slightly brownish center. And to this is almost always accompanied by a strange taste in the mouth. Not bitter, like with gall, sweetish, or sweet and sour. People describe it as something like that. Some strange taste, it is unclear where exactly. Nikolai Andreevich, 61 years old. Year. Complain of fatigue after eating. Ate and after 20 minutes I want to lie down. I have no strength. None. I look at the tongue. It has a thick coating, grayish-white in the center. I'm asking about craving for sweets. It turned out that it sharply has grown over the past 2 years. This classic, pointed at sugar and amylase. The result is prediabetes and enzyme deficiency pancreas. At the same time, a person I didn't realize this for a second. Here the figure I always cite after 50, every third person has decreased pancreatic function and not knows about it. Every third one. It's a rarity, it's a quiet mass story. There are not enough enzymes, food is digested somehow. Nutrients are not or absorbed normally. A person eats but as if it doesn't feed. That's where the weakness comes from: dry skin, brittle nails, hair loss, and white coating that doesn't go away. And here's another thing. Decreased function, pancreatic, and intestinal dysbiosis are almost always go together. One pulls other. There are no enzymes. Food is not digested normally. Undigested, the remains go to bacteria, pathogenic fluorostat, inflammation increases, the pancreas suffers even more vicious circle. And clean your tongue with a rowboat won't break this circle. There's still stress and cortisol, something that people almost never talk about, think in the context of white plaque. Stress chronic background, the one we've gotten so used to it that we've stopped notice him. He became background noise, refrigerator. It seems to be there, but it's not there anymore. Do you hear? With chronic stress, the level cortisol is the main stress hormone grows on average by 2 times. In 2 seconds, diarrhea. And what does it do to digestion? It turns it off. It doesn't weaken it, exactly, turns off. From an evolutionary point of view, when you're in danger, digest your lunch. It's not a priority. The priority is to survive, run away, or fight. Only ours modern stress is not a tiger, from which you can escape in 5 minutes and calm down. It's the mortgage, it's the sick. Parents, these are conflicts at work, anxiety for children, insomnia. This is a tiger who lives with you in the same apartment constantly. And cortisol flows continuously months, years. What about this? What happens to digestion? Saliva, it becomes smaller, the mouth dries out, the intestines freeze, then twitch, then constipation, then no. Stomach acid, it is secreted chaotically, bile stagnates, the microflora moves to the side, pathogenic. This whole bouquet and all this on tongue in the form of a dense white coating. Tamara Ivanovna, 57 years old. By all accounts, according to the tests, I'm absolutely healthy. The ultrasound is clear and the tongue is thickly coated, dry, and smells. I ask, how do you sleep? Badly. For 3 years already. How are your nerves? She paused, then says, I don't remember when it was otherwise. That's the whole diagnosis. Not in analyzes. In 3 years of chronic stress. The main thing to understand about stress, it's not just in itself it causes a raid, it intensifies everything the rest. There is a small problem with bile. Stress turns it into serious. There is mild dysbiosis. Stress accelerates it to the 3rd degree. Stress, it's an amplifier. It multiplies everything that already exists. And one more thing that people don't notice. During a stress attack, it often appears at night. You go to bed with your tongue clean. You wake up white, because at night, when there is no food and movement, cortisol especially active and the language is honest fixes. Now I want to tell you language map, zones and organs about the language map. This is important because looking at the language is one thing, but understanding it, what exactly you see is completely different. Remember it once and you will use it all your life. Mentally divide the language into 3 parts along the length. The tip is front third, middle third. The base is at the very throat, the back third root, and separately left and right side. The tip of the tongue, heart and lungs. If at the very tip of redness, red dots, small ulcers, this is a signal either the cardiovascular system or serious strain on the heart from chronic stress. After 50, this is worth paying attention to. Middle tongue, stomach. The plaque is right here, white or yellowish, dense. This is very often gastritis, acidity disorder. Patients come with heartburn and not understand why I look at the middle language, and I already know roughly what I'm dealing with case. The posterior third, the root, the intestine, kidneys, pelvic organs. Right here, look especially carefully. Dense the plaque at the root is almost always the intestine. If there is also a smell, the intestines are in serious imbalance. Sides of the tongue, right liver, gallbladder, left spleen. Redness along the right edge, serration, slight swelling, liver is overloaded. It's the right one, not the left one. This asymmetry, remember. And here is the sign, about which I said, teeth marks. Fist-shaped edge, like teeth they pressed in the dents. This is swelling of the tongue. A swelling of the tongue is a disorder, water-salt balance, kidney overload, or severe dysbiosis. Right now, stick out your tongue, look at the sides. Edges smooth, good. Wavy with dense. This is information that is not worth ignore. Valentina Nikolaevna, 60 years old, came with swelling of the legs in the evening. I look at the tongue, the edge is fissured, the coating is root, the color is pale. I say, rather in total, there are problems with the intestines, and the kidneys are working under stress. She was surprised. You came with your legs, and I intestines. But the tests confirmed both options, and that's why I always ask every morning brushing your teeth for 30 seconds in front of a mirror in good light, not after breakfast, not after coffee. 4. Because on an empty stomach the tongue shows an honest picture, then it's getting lubricated. And you need to look at 3 color, thickness, moisture things. Color of plaque, thickness, and humidity. The zone is half the information. These 3 parameter, the second half color. White, the most common, speaks of slow digestion, dysbiosis, mucus accumulation, yellow inflammation, liver, gallbladder, the beginning of the inflammatory process in intestines. The more saturated the yellow, the what's happening is more acute. Gray or grayish-white, chronicle. Old dysbiosis, chronic gastritis, stagnation. Brownish. And here I am, I'm telling you right now. These are possible. Serious disruptions in work, pancreas or liver. If directly now you see a brownish color in your self-plaque at the root of the tongue, do not put it off to the doctor. Thickness. Thin, through which pink tongue is visible, is it normal or not? Slight deviation. Dense, which is not, it washes off and lasts all day. This is systemic history. And the denser that the process is taking longer. Not the first month, maybe not the first year. I ask, when was the last time you seen your tongue clean? Most people can't answer. Humidity. Here almost no one evaluates this parameter, but in vain. An excessively moist tongue with white plaque. Mucus in the digestive tract too much. The intestines are overloaded, bile is thick, there are not enough enzymes. Such patients usually feel heavy after eating and constantly want to sleep. Dry tongue, another story. Dehydration, saliva, the glands are not working well, and the autonomic nervous system under chronic stress. Remember Tamara Ivanovna? Everyone, the tests are normal, but the tongue is dry. That's it. Yes. Sergei Mikhailovich, 55 years old. I drink liters of water, but my mouth is dry. My tongue is dry, the coating is thin, whitish, tip flushed, autonomic dysfunction. He drank water correctly. There was just a problem. It wasn't the amount of water. Nervous, the system stopped regulating properly salivation. Now about what people do every day and what transforms a small problem into a chronic one. 5 habits that make you worse. I call these amplifiers. There are 5 of them. And when I list them at the reception, almost everyone recognizes themselves in at least 3. Coffee on an empty stomach. For many, this is sacred, I understand. But coffee on an empty stomach is harsh, releases stomach acid. Acid without food, it irritates the mucous membrane and bile thrown out idle. Intestines reacts. Direct contribution to the raid. Not give up coffee. Just first eat at least something. A spoonful of porridge, a piece of bread, 5 minutes. Eating late, in the evening. After 8 p.m., motor skills, the intestines naturally slow down. This is not a dietary horror story. Physiology. Food that gets there late at night, poorly digested, partially fermented by bacteria. I'll wipe off the thickest plaque. I ask patients with heavy morning on the fly, what time was the last time are you eating? Almost always, at 9, at 10, at 11 a.m. Lack of sleep. This is something no one can handle. It doesn't connect with language, but the connection is direct. At night, the intestines do their technical work maintenance, restores the mucous membrane, regulates flora, removes toxins. If sleep less than 6 hours, no service is completed every night. It's like a factory, which never stops at prevention. In a year, something will break. Antibiotics without recovery has been the same for 20 years. Picture. The man took antibiotics to the point, as intended. Everything is correct. Course I finished and forgot everything. The antibiotic is not selects. It kills pathogens, bacteria, and beneficial ones. After one course, microflora is restored independently in an average of 6 months. 6, and all this time the tongue will be white. And fifthly, an excess of sweetened white bread, not because of the calories, sugar, and fast food. Carbohydrates are food for pathogens, bacteria, and fungi. One day of sweets, the balance is shifting. 3 days in a row, the languages will already show. Alexander Grigorievich, 53 years. According to all tests, he is healthy, but each Monday came with thick white raid. At first, I couldn't understand. It turned out that there were feasts every weekend, cakes, white bread. Exactly 48 hours, and the tongue reacted like clockwork. Coffee on an empty stomach, late meals, lack of sleep, antibiotics without restoration, excess of sweet. Check yourself honestly. If there is at least 2 out of 5, you already know where to start. Now about what's real, what really helps, it helps. I'll tell you honestly right away. 1, there is no remedy because the plaque is a symptom, not a disease. What needs to be treated is what is behind it. But there are several things that work in any situation. Reason. Warm water on an empty stomach. A glass warm water, not hot, not cold, exactly warm 20 minutes before meals. This activates gallbladder motility, liquefies bile, which is released overnight, thickened, prepares the intestines for work. It just works for free. I saw it. People who have only this habit removed morning plaque in 3 weeks, just warm water. Enzyme support. After the bird enzymes become objectively less. It's not a disease, it's age. But if they are not enough, undigested food becomes a nutrient medium for pathogens, bacteria. That's why I often recommend a course of taking enzyme preparations is not constantly, but in courses of 4 to 6 weeks, only after the doctor, because with different conditions require different enzymes. This is not universal history. Restoration microflora. And here's the important detail which people often don't understand. Probiotics, live bacteria, should there is something. Their food is prebiotics, fiber-free probiotics, they just don't take root. That's why this is scheme this. First increase fiber, vegetables, herbs, bran, and then add probiotic courses. Minimum 8 weeks, no 2, not 3, 8. In less time, there was no significant shift in the microflora happens. Choleretic. If the problem is in gallbladder, choleretic agents are needed. But here's what's important. They come in 2 types. Some increase the production of bile, others improve its outflow. In case of bending of the gallbladder or with stones, the first type can cause harm. Therefore, first an ultrasound, then choleretic, not vice versa. And lastly, what I use in practice already more than 10 years. The principle is simple. First you remove the inflammation, then you are restoring. If the intestine's inflamed, populate it with probiotics, it's useless. They won't take root in inflamed environment. First you need to soothe the mucous membrane. 2 to 3 weeks of gentle food, no spicy fried food, alcohol, coffee on an empty stomach. And only then restoration piece. It's like a repair an apartment. First, you level the walls, then you glue the wallpaper. Glue it on the crooked one's walls, everything will be gone in a month. Irina Stepanovna, 58 years old, drank for 3 years, probiotics have been giving no results for 3 years now. To me, I explain this principle. 2 weeks of gentle regimen, then a course probiotics with prebiotics. After 6 weeks ago, she wrote, the language is clean for the first time in several years. Not a magic pill, just the correct order of actions. And 4-week protocol now, a specific plan for weeks without out abstractions. First week, cleaning up irritant. Every morning a glass of warm water 20 minutes before meals. This is not it's discussed, this is the basis. Coffee only after meals. The last meal should be no later than 7 p.m. No sweet whites, bread, fried alcohol. First week, this is a week of silence for the intestines. You don't when you treat, you remove what is interfering treatment. And by the end of the first week, many they notice that the plaque has become thinner, just because they stop throwing in firewood into the fire. Second week. Let's get the bile going, add choleretic products. Beets, pumpkin, leafy greens, a spoon of olive oil or flaxseed oil. In the morning after 15 minutes after warm water. Soft, natural choleretic stimulus. And if there is suspected gallbladder problems, this same week at the Zibrishnaya cavity. 20 minutes of your time but full clarity. Week 3, recovery microflora. By this point, the mucous membrane I've already calmed down a bit. 2 weeks without the irritants have done their job. We're adding probiotics for courses. At the same time, fiber with every meal, mountains fresh vegetables, a spoonful of rubbing. This food for the bacteria you're settling them. They won't survive without food. Week 4, consolidation. To this at the moment most people who honestly, the previous 3 weeks have already passed see the result. The tongue is cleaner, the plaque thinner. Now the task is not to return back. Warm water in the morning, forever. Last meal regime forever. Fiber forever. And once a week in the morning. On an empty stomach, stand in front of a mirror for 30 seconds. Look into your language. This is your personal home monitoring, free and very accurate. And the last thing I want to say is this. The important thing is that what I described is not a treatment. Diseases. This is the restoration of the basic order. If the raid does not decrease, if new ones appeared symptoms, if brown or bright yellow tint, Go to the doctor, no the internet, not to a neighbor, not to a living doctor with tests and ultrasound. The tongue is a map, but you need to be able to read a map professionally. Nadezhda Fyodorovna, 63 years, came after I was diagnosed with dysbiosis and took it for 3 months. Probiotics. The plaque didn't go away. It turned out chronic cholecystitis with small stones. Probiotics are not at all here. They would have helped. 3 months lost. Here, why is language a direction and not a route? The doctor says, my name is Roman Igorevich Tlyashev. If this was helpful like this, it helps the channel. And subscribe. We're discussing health every week. See you there.